Many people think that. Even people who come to university sometimes say, you know, I haven't got access to the photographic studio, so I can't do my photographic project. Say, for instance, with COVID, it's a very good example. My answer to that would be, if you feel empowered creatively, and this is what education at schools must do, must give the opportunity for children to feel empowered creatively. If they do feel empowered creatively, like they say, I'm a creative being, you know, I'm not only a creative being because I've got some fancy oil paints to make a painting. You could take some materials that are not seen as art materials, and you can make something from those. You know, you don't always need, you seldom actually need fancy materials to make things. And I think, but what you need is you need to be able to know that that's the sort of, it's not because you're deprived financially or materially, but rather because actually being creative is seeing the potential in all materials in the world. I know that many teachers, and even teachers at university teaching online, have had to work with some of the very principles of making an image, say, that you can reproduce, so like a printed image. So instead of working with an etching press or a plate and fancy acids and, you know, all sorts of complex materials and processes that you would to make etchings, say, you can actually just make an incision on a sort of polystyrene surface and then make a print on that. Or you can take what many students have done now, you can take a piece of paper and a pencil, a straightforward, you know, an HB pencil, very like a newsprint paper, and you can lean it against a surface, a textured surface, whether it's a wall, whether it's floor, and rub against it, and then you have something that is an image, but it's also a trace, it's a rubbing, it's like a photograph, you know, you can be very, very creative with very little material, actually, if you are, as a teacher, inventive. So I did a project a few years ago. I think I did this project I think it was 2017. I basically used my own process, which is working with glue, which is ordinary glue that you find in hardware stores, or and it's glue that you just use to fix furniture. Most people have this glue in their households or in their garages, or you know, it's easy to access, and I work with it in a way which combines ink, and it could be any form of pigment. It doesn't only have to be ink that you buy in an art shop. It can be anything that has a kind of staining potential. It can be tea, it can be coffee, it can be anything. And I worked with ink and glue, and I had this access to a wonderful big studio or big space in Maitland in Cape Town. And I was there for a period of 3 months. And during that time, I had workshops with learners from many, many different schools in Cape Town. And they just shared the way I worked. And they had an opportunity to work like that as well, which was really a wonderful way of saying that you can work with any materials. You can, as long as you feel that you have the kind of creative agency to do that, and you don't feel scared, and you don't feel afraid of it, and you also, importantly, don't feel that that you're going to make a mistake. There are no mistakes in art. You know, or in fact, what you might think is a mistake ends up being the aha moment. Say, oh, that's interesting. I didn't mean to make that, but I've made it now. Now I see it, and I see its potential. So I can tell you a story, it's almost like everybody's story, but when I was at university in my first year, and we had this was at Rhodes University, and I was drawing, we had to draw pen and ink, very simple drawing, and it was the first time that we were allowed to do a composition, something of our own imagination, and there I was drawing away, and it was pen and ink, and we had to use a kind of dipping pen. Dipping, you know, people don't do that these days, but you have a nib, basically, and draw with it. And I made, basically, a mistake. Some of the ink sort of fell onto the surface of the paper in a way that I hadn't anticipated and certainly hadn't designed. And it basically made a big blot. And just at that moment, my lecturer came around and he was looking at everybody's work, and he said, "Whoa, that's a fantastic cat." Wow, because, you know. So I said, "Oh, where's the cat?" And he said, "No, look, it's a wonderful cat." So I said, "Well, I don't know, I didn't intend it to be a cat." So he said, "Well, you know, that's a really happy accident." And so that was a way, one of the very first things I learnt, that it's not always what you think you can control and what you feel is your very special kind of artistic skill at rendering something, say, but what you can see in what happens. And that's what I mean about the creative potential. So you can do something, this happened to be something very much on a page in a drawing, but you could do something that's as a consequence of your expressive gesture that then happens, and the creativity comes in a way where you recognize that that gesture or that mark that you made by accident has incredible potential, not because it necessarily really looks like a cat with, you know, 4 legs and a tail and little ears, but because in my imagination I can see something in it, and that will lead me to something else.